Hey, remember that time that Rihanna's dad sued her over the use of the name Fenty? Yeah, this is worse than that. Let me tell you a story about the Kellogg's brothers. You see, John Kellogg, the older brother, believed that any kind of sexual interaction outside of procreation was against nature. So a lot of the stories you hear about him would be based on him creating the infamous cornflakes to help cure the urges of masturbation. I don't know how I said that with a serious face, honestly. Well, some would argue that he created the cornflakes to help his patients chew their food a lot more to help them aid in their digestion. But you know what? The masturbation story slaps a lot more, so we're just gonna roll with that. I could actually make a whole video just focusing on his time as a doctor, and he was a very quacky doctor. He had some very interesting tactics, but it'd be a long ass video. So for this video, we're just gonna focus on the cornflakes, the brand, and his bad blood with his little brother Will. So the journey of Kellogg's, as we know as the brand today, started with John and Will coming up with different ways to create a more digestible breakfast for his patients at the Battle Creek Sand. They had created several breakfast options that were bread-like, but they were too hard, and in fact, some patients complained that they had broken teeth after chewing them. So they kind of crushed them into like a granola type substance. I'm pretty sure he didn't create granola. This other guy did, but that's a story for another day. So I forgot to turn the backlight on, but it's on now. So one day Will is at the lab working alone and he's really tired. So he leaves the dough out accidentally and goes home to rest. He comes back the next morning and he noticed that the dough had started fermenting a little. So he decided to process it anyway. And while he was baking it, he noticed that the bacteria that formed in the dough made it a lot more thin and a lot more crispy. That was kind of close to what they were looking for. So they kept experimenting on this same recipe. Over time, they changed from using wheat to using corn. That was the game changer that it needed. So back in the 1800s, people ate leftovers and made porridge in the morning or had to chop up bacon and bake it, which was a whole long, tedious work. So people really took a liking to this cornflakes as soon as Will and John rolled it out. The old method of cooking breakfast took so long, and being able to make breakfast in a blink of an eye that was also healthier, that was a lifesaver for families back then, and everyone jumped on it quick. So on one hand, John really didn't care too much for profits. He just wanted something healthy that was also bland because he thought that if you made food sweeter than it needed to be, it'd make people cave into their more hedonistic urges like masturbation. And if there was one mission he had on this earth, it was to suppress people from their sexual urges. But you see, his brother Will, on the other hand, was a more business savvy kind of guy. And he saw the business opportunity that they were losing on. There was a big hole in the market. And if you ever tasted any sugar-free cereal, you know that you really don't want to eat that if you don't have to. And that was what Will saw. So he pleaded with his brother for them to add sugar to some of the versions at least, so they can grab some more market share. John didn't care for money, so he said, hell nah, not happening. See, John called all the shots, and every opportunity that Will had to help them increase their business, John turned it down. Marketing, advertising, John turned it down. Adding sugar, John turned it down because he just wanted a healthy option of food, and that was it. Money didn't matter to him. See, the problem is, Will was actually right. There was a big hole in the market that kept growing bigger and bigger because not everybody wanted the healthy options. And in a short period of time, people started creating the same cornflakes and they just added sugar. And they were making bank, including Charles Post, one of his old patients at the sanatorium. And at this point, Will had had enough. But you see, Will was John's little brother, but John really looked at him more like a do-boy. He was John's apprentice, and he'll take notes for him, go fetch him a glass of water to drink, or even wipe his ass after he took a shit. Like, it was that bad. Even though they were brothers, it wasn't really any brotherly love going on there. It was more like a master and a servant type relationship that they had. It had been that way since they were kids, even though they were just 8 years apart. Will already got used to taking orders from his brother John and really had no voice for the majority of their lives together. But with this one thing, he felt like he had a chance to prove his value to his brother and maybe even to the world. That being said, it was just as simple as making a version of their cornflakes that had sugar in it and making them more competitive and possibly even going more viral. But his brother didn't really want people fondling themselves, so he just shut him down any chance he got. John really felt that food that had any taste was really one of the gateways to make people cave into their more sexual urges. In fact, he practiced this himself. He was celibate in his relationship with his wife and only had sexual encounters with her for procreation purposes. And some historians truly believe that he created this cornflakes to stop masturbation. And like I said, some more fire stories. So this is a side of history I'm standing on. But let's be honest though. If I told you that he created this cereal just to help with digestion, would you really like this video? Let me know in the comment section. Also, while you're at it, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. But if you really hate it, give it a thumbs down twice, just to let me know you really hate it. So one day, John travels off to Europe, and Will takes this as an opportunity to add everything, sugar, malt, everything nice to this cornflakes recipe, and it blows up. People loved it. It was flying off the shelf. And to his surprise, when John got back, he was not happy at all. He was like, what the hell is this? Change the recipe back. So this disagreement made things a lot worse. And at some point, Will was like, I've had enough. I'm about to bounce. So he left. For the first time in their lives, he decided to step out of his brother's shadows and actually create his own business. But not long after he left, before he couldn't even get the ball rolling, the Battle Creek Sanatorium that his brother was the director of burned down to the ground. And maybe he was being a good brother, or maybe he just had Stockholm Syndrome, but he knew his brother needed help, so he went back to help his brother put things together. So like I said before, Will was the financial brain behind the operation, so he came in clutch, and he helped his brother build the sanatorium even better than it was before. And with all that said, their relationship, you would think that John was thankful and would maybe give his brother a little more respect, but that boy didn't give a fuck. Their relationship soured further. And even worse, Will had to see old Posty down the street making bread from their idea just because he had a little sugar in it. And the even more annoying part is that at this point, John had lost all his money. He was down bad from building the sanatorium back up. So he had to sit there and listen to a brokey talk down at him. He had more money than John at that time. But he knew that even if he bounced, he still needed a way to break away free and not have any copyright or legal problems while creating his own cornflakes. So he watched John suffer for a little bit. For over 3 years, John was piling up debt. So after watching John struggle for a little bit, flailing around, he pulls up. He's like, you know what, John? I see what's happening, man. I got a little nest egg, and I know you're struggling. Yo, let me help you. In fact, let me buy the rights to this cornflakes from you, and I'll just go produce my own thing. You can do your thing at the sanatorium, make some more breakfast options for them, whatever you want to do, and let me just go out on my own and do my own thing. John didn't like this, but you know what? The boy didn't have any choice, so he sold it to him. See, after he bought those rights, everything was up. That boy was a marketing genius too, so all the things he's been trying to get his brother to do in marketing and advertising, he did everything. He opened his own toasted cornflakes company, started marketing heavy, and it blew up. So one of his advertising that went viral was telling people that every time they went to the grocery store to wink at the grocer, and they get a little secret. And the secret was a sample of the new Kellogg's cornflakes with sugar in it this time. Man, that boy had people winking all over the grocery store trying to get a little secret something, if you know what I mean. Now, I'm not sure if people were happy or disappointed at the secret they got after they winked, but safe to say that the marketing was very, very effective. In fact, Will was one of the first manufacturers to start adding nutritional facts to the box of their cornflakes. But what do you know? With all this success, John was not happy, because as Will went up, John went down. Less and less people were coming to the sanatorium because it was maybe too expensive, or things weren't just working the way that it used to work. And at some point, John started thinking like, yo, maybe I should keep the Kellogg's name and start creating cereal for the sanatorium. Well, you see, that's a problem, because him creating that will damage the sales and marketing that Will had already created. But John is a hardhead. He kept going. And Will, unfortunately, had no choice but to sue his brother. John said, the nerve of this boy, so he sues him back. And John's defense was, hey, listen, I was the first one to blow up. I created this whole Kellogg thing, so I should be the one to keep the name. On the other hand, Will was like, hey, I did all the marketing and advertising, and I made it a household name, so I should be able to keep the name Kellogg's. For 10 long years, they kept going at it, and eventually the courts was like, you know what? Can't lie. Will got it, man. Will got it. So they gave the name to Will. And Will celebrated by putting that rooster mascot that we all know today. Now, with the loss of this case and him having to pay the legal fees for the case, John just kept falling into the background, exactly the same place that Will was his entire life. At some point, he had a $3 million debt. He couldn't keep the sanatorium open. Things were going super bad for him. And to some extent, it would seem that John just couldn't stand his handyman, who happened to be his brother, be this much successful than him. But either ways, he couldn't do nothing about it. So he just fell back. But he lived a long life. He lived all the way to 91. And for the 1800s, that's a very long time. In his old age, John has had a lot of time to think. And at this point, he's thinking to himself that maybe I was a little bit of a dick to my brother. And maybe it's not that bad of an idea to reconcile with him. So he called the secretary to dictate a note to his brother. It was a 7-page letter of reconciliation to his brother. The secretary listened to him, took all the notes down, all 7 pages of it, but she was disgusted. Like, what the fuck? Why would you ever write any of this shit? To her, this letter was beneath her employer. She was never going to send it. So she takes the letter after he was done, folds it up nicely, and chucks it into her cabinet and never looked back at it again. That said, John never got a chance to hear back from his brother Will because his secretary blocked the shit out of that. And at the age of 91, he dies from complications of bronchitis. And you know what? In all honesty, I don't think Will had any animosity towards his brother, considering all the sadistic ways that John treated him since they were kids. And by some miracle, John's letter actually finds its way to Will while he was on his own deathbed. And after reading the letter and realizing how bad things was for his brother, on one of the pages of the letter, he actually tried to borrow money from Will, but he never got the letter. And all he could say is, why didn't anyone tell me before this? You know what's so sad about this is that I actually know 2 brothers who are exactly like this, and their bad blood runs so deep that I didn't even know they were brothers until 5 years after I had met them. All I can just hope and pray is that this story doesn't end up like this one. Thanks for watching. And be sure to subscribe if you want to hear more culturally relevant stories, some god-awful jokes, or you just want to learn something new about the life around you. Until next time, cheers.